Hey everybody, it's Chuck Dixon, your comic book pal, your friend on the inside of the comic book industry, here to answer questions about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books. Now, if you have questions for me, questions, suggestions, complaints, so you just want to say hi, the most reliable way to contact me is at brunobookstore@gmail.com. So if you have a question for me, ask it there, and I'm absolutely certain to see it. Um, and of course, you can question, me in the comments section below. I often respond there, but it's not as reliable as using the direct email access that I am providing to you, the Chuck Dixon viewer, at this moment. Hey, Malcolm Robertson, he asks, you often cover manga and its current superiority to American comics. What's your opinion of another Japanese form, the light novel? Is it just a book with a few pictures peppered in, or do you think it's something unjustly neglected in the US? Is it a style you'd like to work in someday? I've sold these. I've seen these before. I saw them as far back in the 70s when I used to visit the Kinokuniya bookstore in New York City, and it's a neat format. Um, and apparently they're beginning to publish them here in the United States. I don't know what degree of success they have, but every country has its own you know unique publication style. We had big little books here in the United States in the 1930s. We had the pulps. In England, they had serialized fiction, weekly newspapers with serialized fictional stories in them. It's something that didn't really exist here. Um, in Italy, they have comic books that they sell only in train stations. So every country has its own unique publication style, and this is one for Japan, the light novel, the illustrated novel. It's kind of a little bit more grown-up version of our old Big Little book, but it's not a medium I know anything about, really. It's not a story style I'm all that familiar with, other than I leafed through them in Kinokuniya, but they were entirely in Japanese, so you know they I didn't know what they were. Sort of prose anime, prose manga. Um, but it's an interesting format. Not one I'm particularly suited to write in. But you made me look it up. maybe you made me remind myself that I had seen these before. Okay, Malcolm Robertson again. Why have superheroes really never caught on in the medium of prose where they have in comics and film? It's kind of a related question, isn't it? Are they inherently suited to visual mediums due to their costumes and powers? Um, it's there used to be, I think there used to be there used to be chapter books of comic strip characters. When I was a kid, I read a bunch of Blondie and Dagwood chapter books. Um, so it's not, new. Disney did chapter books, and in the 60s, when the superhero craze was on with the Batman television show, a few publishers tried paperback novelizations or paperback unique or new paperback novels about some of the more popular superheroes. I don't think they met with any great success. And over time, because it's a cheaper format, prose is a far cheaper format than comics, obviously, because it's just paying a guy to write words. Um, they've had some success with, and they try it every once in a while. It's not something I've ever really thought about doing. At the height of Nightwing's popularity, DC approached me about doing a Nightwing novel, and I took a stab at it, but I just was never satisfied with the results because, as you point out, comics is such a visual medium. It's, you know, reading about a guy flying around, punching giant robots simply pales into insignificance when you can see it, especially drawn well, and drawn in an exciting manner. Because comics are an immediate experience, and superheroes in particular lend themselves to this medium because they're in their colorful costumes and all the rest. I've read some prose superhero stuff, and I just didn't enjoy it. I was like, well, why not do this as a comic? Because I'm reading a story and I'm picturing it in my mind as a comic book. Uh, it's, to me, it's a bit frustrating. But, you know, some people have done it and done it successfully, and God bless them. It's just not something that interests me. Salem, he asks, hello, sir. First, sorry for my English and greetings from Poland. Well, you should hear my Polish. you're, you're doing fine, Salem. Do you have any Vertigo imprint comics that you like? The simple answer is no. Uh, Vertigo comics never appealed to me, but I'm not the Vertigo audience. With their sort of nihilistic approach, sort of anti-hero and often anti-American approach to things, they weren't something that I really dug. And I found some of the characters extraordinarily annoying. Uh, you know, and when Vertigo initially came along, it was an outlet for British writers to write about the United States. And I always said, well, they're writing dystopic stories about the United States because no one cares when they write dystopic stories about England. So they were, basically pandering to this new audience. I didn't really like being lectured about the failings of American society. Um, being lectured about that by people that didn't live here. And only had a little bit of an understanding, gleaned by, uh, you know, during the taxi ride from JFK to the DC offices. This is how they learned about America, and from our television and whatever they see in England. Just really didn't appreciate it. But what I did appreciate about Vertigo was that it was an attempt to reach a new audience, and for that aspect, it was very successful. One of my very first encounters with a certain editor-in-chief at DC, he was complaining to me that DC Comics was carrying Vertigo. And then I reminded him that at the time, Vertigo had more movie and television deals in the works than DCU did. So Vertigo was not being carried by anybody. And their sales, for a long time were very strong. And as I said, they were reaching an audience that DCU didn't. They were reaching an older, more jaded, audience. But there was an audience. My only problem was they didn't try to reach other audiences. But Vertigo's had a good run as far as getting stuff out into ancillary medium, TV and movies and the rest of it. So it was a great idea. I believe, I don't know if the idea was Karen Berger's or Karen Berger was assigned to run the line, but she had an extraordinarily successful run. And I think that Vertigo achieved its goals in creating new material for a brand new audience and expanding, or at least slowing down the shrinking of the American comic book audience. I mean, I'm all for trying anything different. I don't expect every comic book to appeal to me, but I certainly, you know, wish anyone who goes into any kind of creative endeavor in comics the very best, even if it's not stuff that's my cup of tea. So, hope that explains all of that. I didn't like Vertigo Comics, but I respect Vertigo Comics for what they were doing. They just weren't my thing. Salem's got another question. Same with European comics. Have any favorites? Do you know Black Sad? I think it's in your taste, not to mention that it seems you like cats. Well, I don't dislike cats. Black Sad, yeah, I've looked at it. It doesn't seem like something I would like. But, I was introduced to European comics like every other comic fan to things like Asterisk and, Lucky Luke, which I still read both of these. A lot of Lucky Luke is being translated into English for the first time, so I've been able to read almost all of it. I mean, it's like 80 volumes of this. Lucky Luke, I really enjoy it. Asterix as well. I like the Asterix movies. But I keep up with some of the stuff. I mean, recently I really, you know, I guess recent years, the past 20 years, I've really gotten into Tex Willer, published by Benelli in Italy. And I even had the honor to be able to contribute a few stories to the Tex Willer canon, and just the greatest Western comic ever published in the world. I really enjoy it, and 75, 80 years on, it's still fresh and exciting. They find new ways to entertain with what is basically a very, very meat and potatoes simple Western series, but they do some amazing stuff with it. Another series I follow is called Angel Wings. It's a World War II aviation-based series with, as you can see, absolutely gorgeous artwork. And another series called Eagles of Rome, which is about German barbarians versus the Roman Empire in the, I think, the 1st century AD. And as you can see, again, beautifully drawn, wonderfully told, very, very dramatic. Another series I love is called Sauvage, and it's way inside my wheelhouse because it's about the French army under Maximilian fighting the Juaristas, the Mexican rebels in the 1870s. And just beautifully drawn, again, historically accurate, very, very engaging stuff. And then there's some artists that I follow. Olivier Schwartz is a cartoonist of simply astounding abilities, and I really dig his stuff. He's done work on Spirou. He's done an Inspector Bayard series, and he's currently working on a new series called Atom Agency. And it's really cool stuff set post-war Paris with a detective agency, a guy who looks very much like Fred McMurray in the lead role. So another artist I follow, and I'm going to slaughter his last name, Corrado Mastantuono. This guy, I think I found him first, and then I turned Sergio Cariello onto him, and we're like his biggest fans in the United States. And as you can see, the guy is an incredible draftsman. Here he is drawing an episode of Tex, and he just attention to detail, the power, the action here in the story, the characterization, and everything. But the guy is he's just a super artist. He works in a lot of different genres, including Disney stuff. I mean, look at the command here. I mean, look this incredibly photorealistic looking art form, this artwork, and yet he can do the Bigfoot humor stuff with equal aplomb. I mean, that's an artist. That's you can go from cartooning to that finer illustrative style. I mean, I pick up anything by this guy I can find. Corrado Mastantuono. Just awesome stuff. He needs to be discovered here in the United States. And please, God, don't put him on Superhero Comics. Osenwang says, thank you for taking the time to read this message. I'm reading it aloud to thousands of listeners right now. I enjoy your work so much, but there's a question bothering me. In Birds of Prey issue number 42, why did order Power Girl to protect the president instead of the populace when 2 suicide bombers were coming? Although protecting the president was the original mission, the consequences were horrible. Yeah, that was, I mean, I generally don't write with a theme going in. But a theme grew out of the Birds of Prey stories, and not so much out of the Birds of Prey stories, but about what they were about. And the overall encompassing theme of my entire Birds of Prey run is unintended consequences. I mean, early on, this is the 1990s when I'm writing Birds of Prey, and it's the dawn of all of us becoming computer literate. It's the dawn of the World Wide Web. And we're all learning all of these new things like email and message boards. And social media is in the future. So it's not even something they talk about, but doesn't exist yet, except in a message board form, and cozier form than it does today, a friendlier form than it does today. But early on in the computer age, the age of information, I say that ironically, it became clear that a lot of the promises made about computer technology were a lie, or they were going to be proven a lie. The idea that the internet would contain all of human knowledge, well, that's a fallacy. We all know that. It doesn't contain the sum of human knowledge. You can't find everything, every thought, every piece of literature, every piece of music. You can't, it's not on the internet, and it may never be. Because it's as vast as the internet is, and all the many, many millions and millions of server farms across the planet, None of them are big enough to contain all of human thought, human, written record since the dawn of the written language. And also, even if it did, how would it be accessible? So I realized early on this was a lie. Now, the premise of the Birds of Prey is that Oracle, Barbara Gordon, Oracle, is a computer sage, a seer of the age of information, and she can, send these superpowered characters or these vigilantes on missions based on information that only she can glean through her computer array, in her techno lair in Gotham City. And I wanted to prove this premise ridiculous, um, because there's a big difference between gleaning data and understanding what's actually happening. A big difference from seeing things from a distance and having all of your information lined up and actually experiencing what's going on the ground. And so very often in Birds of Prey stories, she would send Black Canary or whatever other operative she was using on a mission with all the information that she had at her hands, only to find out once Black Canary got on the ground that everything was not exactly as it had been represented, or not exactly as Oracle understood it. And this is an experience we've all had since the computer age has begun, since we've begun getting all of our information off of social media, off the internet. We find that oftentimes we're being misled, misinformed, directed in a certain way. There's no such thing as raw data. Everything is seen through some subjective lens, either political or cultural. I mean, just look at Wikipedia. It's, oftentimes there's a slant to things in Wikipedia, cultural, political, whatever, that obscures the objective truth of whatever subject Wikipedia is dealing with. So I wanted to show this, and I sort of built into the series this backstory, my giant rat of Sumatra story, that before Black Canary was chosen to be Oracle's operative, Power Girl was her operative. And Power Girl left, they parted ways badly. Power Girl left the employ of Oracle as an early Birds of Prey under a cloud, under shadowy, unfortunate circumstances. And I knew my run on this book was coming to an end because I was leaving for CrossGen. I was leaving DC Comics. But I didn't want to leave before I told that story, because I thought about the story a lot. And what Birds of Prey number 42 is really about is a Sophie's Choice kind of situation, where Oracle sends Power Girl on a mission to a country that is in rebellion. It's implied that it's a country shifting from from a secular Islamic state to a fundamentalist Islamic state. And it was much like what was going on in Pakistan at the time, where Pakistan had a female president, and the tide of radical Islam was shifting against her. And Oracle sends Power Girl to save the female president from what will be a lethal military coup. And when Power Girl gets there on the spot, realizes the situation is a lot more complicated than Oracle had been led to believe. And eventually, Power Girl is forced to make a decision. There's a double threat, a threat to the president's life, the president of this Islamic Republic's life. There's also a threat to a boatload of refugees. And Oracle insists that Power Girl stick with the original mission and save the life, bodyguard the life of this female president, because Oracle believes that in the end, that will be the better of the two goods. That to save the boat of refugees and let the president die will plunge this country into tyranny, and that in the end will result in many, many, many thousands of more deaths and oppression, and possibly be irreversible, Whereas if she can save the president's life, then it'll be a better future for that country. Okay, so these are big decisions that have to be made instantaneously. Power Girl cannot save both. She can't take both options. She saves one person in exchange for the lives of thousands of others. And in the end, this is all seen as this was not the right way to go. This was not the right decision to make. Oracle pays for this emotionally, and Power Girl is completely torn up and can no longer proceed. She no longer trusts Oracle's judgment, and she won't continue on with her as an operative. And that's why Power Girl quits as the first bird of prey, and then Oracle must find a replacement, which is Black Canary. And that's where my series began. But so, yeah, well, I never in the story ever presented that they made the right decision. What was the right decision? I left it up to the reader. What was the right thing to do? But in the end, it all turns out tragic because Oracle's understanding of what was happening in that place was not complete. And that, as I said, that's kind of the theme of Birds of Prey, that the fallacy of believing in data gleaned strictly, through electronic or digital means. One of the things I like this story. It's a hard story to tell in comics, the failure of the heroes. But I thought it was an important one. It was a realistic one. It was an honest one. And the other thing I really like about it was when Oracle tells Power Girl to fly over there, Power Girl goes domestic. She takes domestic airline. She flies coach. And Oracle can't understand that. You can fly. And then Kara explains to her that flying over the ocean is boring. It takes a lot of time. And it's boring. There's no scenery. There's nothing to look at. She said, I could get there in the same amount of time on a jet. And I've always wanted to make that point with superheroes. I mean, if you could run really fast, you were the Flash and you could run around the world. It'd be really cool for about 15 minutes. And then it'd be like, oh, God. I'm going so fast, I'm not seeing anything. I'm just running. I may as well be at home on a treadmill. Same thing for flying. If a character could fly, how dull would that get? Jesus, Kansas goes on forever and ever and ever. What if you were a Russian superhero flying around Russia? Take you days to get anywhere. Anyway, so I appreciate that question. And yeah, I did not try to present that they made anywhere near the right decisions in this story. This is a story of failure. Chris, is it Sueva or Cueva? I don't know your ethnicity, your nationality. Are you against politics and comics completely? Absolutely not. I've written political books. I did The Forgotten Man, A History of the Great Depression, adapting Amity Schleye's epic history of some of the darkest years in American history. And it is, I don't think it's political, but it is because it's seen to have a conservative viewpoint. It's very down on the New Deal, which I don't think history is going to judge well, in the end. But, so I've done that, and I've done, the Clinton Cash, a far more political book, an adaptation of Peter Schweitzer's exposure of the Bill and Hillary Clinton's rather tawdry work with their foundation and how basically they used it to enrich themselves. It's purely political. So I'm not against politics in comics. I'm not against anybody's politics in comics. Back in the underground days, I used to read Trash Man by Spain Rodriguez. I mean, it's basically calls for Marxist revolution in the United States, bloody Marxist revolution. And it's very anti-American, very anti-white when you get right down to it. But I dug the energy of it. I didn't believe in any of it. I didn't agree with any of it. But I certainly respected Spain Rodriguez's right to make any kind of comic book he wants. My problem with politics in comics is when you mix it with mainstream comics, when superheroes take a side, decide that they're Democrat or Republican, and 99.99% of the time they're going to side with the Democrat. where one president is seen as a hero and the other one is seen as an ogre or a coward or whatever, depending on their party line. Now, like the old Mad magazine, if comics were to either elevate or mock each president with the same severity to the same level, I'd be fine with it. But this is politics being put into a place it does not belong. Politics does not belong in superhero comics. I've said it before, I said it again. I'm a comics fan, you're a comics fan, but let's face it, these characters were created to entertain children. Okay? They were never meant to be anything more than that. They were never meant to be political. They were never meant to be literature. They were never meant to be meaningful. They were just meant to be good, solid, American, red-blooded entertainment. And putting politics into it ruins it. It ruins anything. Anytime if you made a political kung fu movie, I would say the same thing. Get off it. Stop doing that. So, speaking of putting politics and stuff, Liren Shoham says, you talked about Overrated, when earlier I talked about overrated movie directors. You didn't mention Sorkin. Well, I could go on and on about overrated screenwriters, but Sorkin is, he's overrated. He's way, way overrated. Sorkin wrote a lousy screenplay based on his lousy play, A Few Good Men, and it was about a court trial over the murder of a Marine on Guantanamo, in the Guantanamo base in Cuba. And it's bad for so many reasons. Number one, it doesn't seem to get any of the courtroom details right in a military trial. Tom Cruise creates a whole bunch of obstacles for himself as a JAG lawyer that don't actually exist in military jurisprudence, but hey, makes for a good story, right? And the other problem I have with the story, well, many, many problems I have with the story, but the worst offense is when Cruise tells his crew of Demi Moore and a couple of other characters that he tells them what he's gonna do, and his only way to win this trial is if he can get Jack Nicholson on the stand, the commander of the Guantanamo base. If he can get him on the stand and get him to lose his temper. And that's the plan. Look, kids, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to get him up there. I'm going to badger him with questions until he loses it. Now, you know what happens next? He badgers him with questions, and Nicholson loses it. You never do that in a story. That's not deconstructed storytelling. That's not surprising. You don't say, hey, we're going to go rob this bank, and this is how we're going to do it. And then the rest of the movie is a flawless depiction of this crime where nothing goes wrong. That's not dramatic. That's not suspenseful. That's not surprising. That's lazy, lazy, lazy writing. And the other thing about this movie is its most famous line, "You can't handle the truth," was an ad lib. Nicholson ad libbed it. He didn't like the original line. He didn't think it sounded natural. He didn't think it sounded honest. And so he comes up with, "You can't handle the truth." And, it's a brilliant line. Sorkin didn't write it. The other problem I have with this movie is when Nicholson says, you need me on that wall. Yeah, we do. These are the kind of guys we do need. This isn't patty cake. This is the military. This is war. We need tough guys willing to do rough things that maybe we couldn't do. Well, we certainly couldn't do. And we need them to do that. We need them to do bad things to bad people to keep our country free. But of course, Sorkin is a big liberal, and this movie was directed by a guy whose biggest career highlight was playing himself on All in the Family. And when I saw this movie, I was incensed. I was enraged. I felt like I'd been, bamboozled for 2 hours. And it was confirmed to me when at the end of the movie, the words "the end" grow to fill the screen. Now, it had been 25 years since I had seen a movie end with the words "the end." You never see a movie end with "the end." And they were like, "the end," like we're going to push the end right in your face. It was like saying F you if you didn't like this movie. I mean, it was a movie that just seemed to not like its own audience. I thought it was a stupid premise and everything else. The only thing that elevates it is Nicholson's performance, which is amazing, but it's in a lousy movie. And like I said, best line in the movie, the most quoted Sorkin line of all time. Nicholson made it up on the spot. Sorkin's writing in general, I just am not impressed with. He's infamous for not only repeating lines of dialogue he's already written, but repeating entire exchanges. And people will tell me, oh, look at this clever line of dialogue and that clever line of dialogue. It's all epigrams and, switching around words and people talking the way people don't really talk. And I understand movie dialogue isn't the way real people talk, but no one talks like Sorkin characters, unless they're extremely tiresome. Of course, most of his characters are. But most of the stuff he writes is left-wing fantasy. American President, The Newsroom, The West Wing. It's all like, this is how, you know, Upper West Side New York liberals want the world to be. This is how New Yorker readers want the world to be, as opposed to how the world really is. So yeah, Sorkin, way overrated. Stuff is maddening. Anyway, hey, have you checked out ArcTunes? If not, why not? It's free. It's a high-res digital comic book platform. We've got dozens and dozens and dozens of series running, many of them up to 3 months worth of episodes. New episodes every week. Like I said, it's high res. You can watch it on any device, including this big old gigantic screen in your living room or den. That's how high the res is. So come along, check it out. Go to archaven.com and ArcTunes pops right up there. It's super easy. It's super accessible, and it's a lot of fun. And it's free. Hey, I want to thank everybody here for listening, subscribing. The audience has grown a lot in the last few weeks. I appreciate all of that. Keep hitting those like buttons. Keep spreading the word around. I really want to keep doing these. They're a lot of fun, and I enjoy the back and forth. And I'll see everybody down the road.